The Ice type is known as the weakest type in the game, and while it can hit hard against common types like Ground, Flying, and Dragon, it gets absolutely destroyed by Fire, Steel, and Fighting, which are some of the best typings in the game. My personal favorite Ice type has to be Rotom Freeze because it's a fridge that's also your friend, the dream! And we can get a lot of cool Ice types in Sword and Shield, but let me know what your favorite Ice Pokemon is down in the comments below. Because of the Hardcore Nuzlocke rules, any fainted Pokemon can never be used again, no items from the bag can be used in battle, we play on set mode at all times, and we can't level past the next gym leader's highest level Pokemon. Additionally, we only get to catch the first Ice-type Pokemon in any area, and I'm not going to be allowing Dynamax at all. So join me as I attempt to beat a Pokemon Sword Hardcore Nuzlocke using only Ice types. I go ahead and kick off the adventure by picking Sobble as my starter so that Hop gets the super effective Fire type on his team. I go ahead and name it Keegan since Sobble is Keegan J's absolute favorite Pokemon.
Excuse me, what? My favorite? You know Sobble is my least favorite Galar starter. What the f-
Anyway, now that we've given Keegan exactly what he would have wanted, we can get our actual first encounter, a Snover. I capture it and name it Bigfoot, and it turns out it's got a pretty crummy special attack lowering nature. We then run into Bede, who simultaneously has the worst fashion sense and the worst attitude in the entire game. Seriously, what a piece of work. And so the time has come for us to take on the first gym versus Milo's grass types with our ice types. And because of Snow Warning, we can take out Gossifleur in a single hit with a 100% accurate Blizzard. Eldegoss, however, does outspeed us and hits us with a powerful max strike that only does about 45%, after which we can retaliate back with a Blizzard that does about 45% of our own. For whatever inexplicable reason, Milo then goes for a max Overgrowth, which at least puts us in range to be taken out by another max strike, and a Blizzard doesn't quite take out the Eldegoss, but fortunately, we have the Ice Shard to be able to outspeed despite the speed drops and take out the Eldegoss. If you don't take proper care of your equipment, it can fail you when you really need it. Very odd words of wisdom from this guy, but I guess remember to wash your junk? To prepare us for our next gym battle, I decide to catch a few more Pokemon, the first of which being Snorunt. My Snorunt is female, so I have the option to evolve it into a Frostlass, so I pick up the Dawnstone in the wild area and proceed to evolve it right away. I also go over to Lake Axwell where I can fish myself up a Shelder. And since you can also pick up a Waterstone in the wild area, I evolve it right away into a Cloyster. And I am not sure who gave the green light for this design back in Generation 1, but whoever it is, they're not very familiar with the female anatomy. Now, despite my issues with Cloyster's design, we do actually have to have it for a reason, and that's because of Shell Smash and Water moves, because without it, we are not going to outspeed or be able to take out this Raboot whatsoever. That's right, Bede, I dare say I'm impressed how far you've come. Now listen, Rose, impressed and Bede, they just don't go together in the same sentence. Either way, we've got bigger fish to fry, namely Nessa and her water types. Now luckily we've got Bigfoot, who's both a grass type and can set up sword stands, however I'm not sure how many hits it can actually take from Dynamax Dreadnought. So just to play it safe, I make sure to give Bigfoot the leftovers and go for Protect every other turn to get as much recovery as possible to not risk this. I one-hit knock out the Goldeen with a Seed Bomb and in comes Arrokuda, so I go for Protect just to get a bit more recovery, but the next turn, the Arrokuda goes for Bite, and if I flinch, I'm not going to have enough health. However, fortune smiles upon me today, and I don't get flinched by the Bite, and in comes the Dynamax Dreadnought that hits me with a Max Darkness that leaves me on 6 HP, which gives me the opportunity to hit back with a quad-effective +2 Stab Seed Bomb for the win. I hate to have to break the ice this way, Vanessa, but that's good game. After my glorious victory, I head back to the wild area where I can find my next encounter, a Swinub, and this thing is the cutest Pokemon ever. Oh my goodness, so cute! Is it just me, or does Rose's beard look like it's made of stickers?
I've made it this far at least, but now I'm not sure I can make it any further. Can I really beat a fire gym? I don't know.
And that's exactly the question I was asking myself before taking on Kabu, the Fire-type gym leader, which could be a big problem for our Ice types. But we of course have Cloyster, who's an Ice and Water type, and we get burned the first turn as I go for a Shell Smash. And the next turn, I make a risky decision and go for another Shell Smash to be able to one-hit KO everything, but that means that Ember is going to do massive damage because of -2 special defense, and Cloyster's special defense being pretty bad in the first place. Fortunately though, that Ember left me at exactly enough health to where I can survive 2 turns of burn damage, which is all I need to take out all of Kabu's Pokemon in one hit with Surfs. So not only did we defeat the Fire-type gym leader without losing any Pokemon, the guy lost by literally being drowned by puss. Then after leaving Motostoke, somehow Hop loses to Bede. Somebody needs to put this guy in his place. And on my way to our next gym fight, I reluctantly pick up our next encounter, A Delibird. Seriously, just one of the most garbage Pokemon ever invented. I also go ahead and pick up a Sneasel, which is like the opposite of the most garbage Pokemon ever invented. Now for these runs, I always have a nickname theme, and this time I wanted to go with cryptids, but I didn't know that you can't actually use Chupacabra as a name. We agreed to meet at the Pokemon Center, but I've been here a while and still no sign. Dinner date flaked on ya, huh? That's rough, buddy. Rhydon against Gastrodon. I'm at a disadvantage in terms of type matchup, but experience is on my side. Gastrodon, I choose you! Squeal! Squishy, squishy, squash! Oh my, okay, yep, you're right. This guy definitely doesn't have the experience. And speaking of experience, I make sure to get some on Swinub to prepare for the gym and have it evolve into a Piloswine. And since every Pokemon Center has the move relearner, we can just teach it Ancient Power, level it up again, and turn it into a Mamoswine. Which means the time has come to take on another scary gym, the Fighting type gym versus B, who starts out with a Hitmontop, so I go for my Frostlass, and since this Hitmontop only has normal and Fighting type moves, it can't actually hurt Frostlass. This gives me a free opportunity to drastically lower the attack of this Hitmontop by going for Charm and Will-O-Wisp so that we can safely swap in Cloyster. So even though Shell Smash lowers our defense every single time we use it, the fact that this Hitmontop can't really hurt me at all with that abysmal attack stat, I can just set up freely and take out every single Pokemon with Surf except Machamp. And for whatever reason, I decided to go for Icicle Spear, which as you can see, 2 of them does less than half, which means I have to get 5 to even take this thing out, which actually ends up happening. And I know that Cloyster can get Skill Link, but mine actually has Battle Armor, so that was very unlikely to happen, but I'll take it. Also, the way Bee holds her elbow, it seems like she's hurt it, and she's supposed to be like a martial arts master. How do you hurt your elbow throwing a Pokeball? We then find out that Bede has stolen Caparaja from Rose to be able to destroy a historical monument, and I really hope they give this guy what he deserves. Before taking on Opal, I return to the wild area to find my next encounter, a Vanillite. And this thing gets a lot of hate for being the ice cream Pokemon, but fun fact, it was actually designed by the same guy who's the art director for Sword and Shield. I also decided to name it Sundae because since the ice cream machine at McDonald's is always broken, it's pretty much a mythical creature. But this means that we have to take on the 5th gym leader, Opal, and her fairy types, and this time I decide to go for Mamoswine. Now against Opal, I would always recommend going for Protect every other turn so that you get the questions faster. This first one, you get the +2 in speed, which is going to be massively useful. I then start setting up with Amnesia since every single Pokemon on Opal's team, except for Mawile, is a special attacker, which means they're not going to be able to do any damage as soon as I set up to +6. Her Galarian Weezing even starts going for Tackle since Fairy Wind isn't doing enough damage, and I end up getting the second question here to boost my defenses even further, which means I can start going for Ice Fang. After my second Ice Fang, I end up getting the final stat boosting question to boost both my attack and special attack by 2, so the next attack takes out the Weezing. This means that Opal's next Pokemon is Mawile, which unfortunately has Intimidate, which is going to lower my attack back to only +1, but I still managed to take it out with a single Earthquake. We then have to deal with Togekiss, which is normally a nightmare, but because of all those special defense boosts, it can't really hurt us. We don't manage to take it out in one hit because we're only at +1, but a second one does the trick. This means that the only Pokemon left is Gigantamax Alcremie, and a crit Earthquake doesn't quite do the job, but since we have all that special defense, it doesn't matter what Opal throws at us, it's gonna do pitiful damage. So all we have to do to clean up is click Earthquake one more time, and that's it for the 5th gym. Right, left, right. Yeah, my neck is definitely still working. Moving on, we make our way to Route 8, where I find myself a random encounter, which happens to be a Galarian Darumaka, which is a Pokemon I've never used, so I'm very excited to get to use this thing. It's too bad that it's not regular Darumaka, because if we had it and Vanillite, we'd have an entire McDonald's order. Upon reaching level 42, Snover evolves into Abomasnow, and it's finally time to take on the 6th gym versus Gordie and his rock types. I lead with Bigfoot to set up the hail and send this Barbaracle aching back to its Pokeball with a quad-effective Seed Bomb. Shuckle's up next, so I swap out a Bigfoot into Cloyster, and I get hit by a Rock Tomb on the switch, which isn't that great since we don't want our speed lowered. However, since Shuckle's attack stat is one of the worst in the entire game, I'm not even afraid of lowering my defense with Shell Smash. And since Rock Tomb only lowers speed by 1 stage and Shell Smash boosts it by 2, I just have to make sure to use Shell Smash enough to be net positive in speed. Once that's the case and I'm at +6 attack because of Shell Smash, I destroy the Shuckle with a Liquidation and the Stonejourner with a Surf. This leaves only Colossal, but since it's quad weak to water and we're at +6 attack, it's not exactly a contest. So now that we've beaten Gordie, we can finally pick up the water bike, which means we can get a lot of new stuff. And foolishly, I decided that I wanted to fish for a Lapras, and so after standing in the wrong spot where you can't actually even find Lapras for about 2.5 hours, and then painstakingly fishing up every Wailord in the entire ocean, even my Switch decided it was fed up with the situation and just crashed on me. But then, after about 3 hours of wasting my time, I finally find Nessie the Lapras.
You know, it's actually pronounced Lapra.
Oh wow, you'd think I know that, having searched for it for so long and being European. I really appreciate the help, Flig and Higgy. The water bike also means that we can go to the Lake of Outrage where I pick up an ice stone, which means we can evolve Darumaka into Darmanitan, the abominable snowman. Alright, let me just click out of the oh, come on! The water bike also lets us pick up the Razor Claw, which means we can evolve Sneasel into Weavile. And so with all the recent upgrades to the team, it's time to take on the 7th gym versus Piers and his dark types. I lead with my ghost type to eat the Intimidate and to make sure that Scrafty goes for payback as I swap out into Cloyster. Now this Scrafty can be incredibly annoying and go for Sand Attack, which is exactly what it does after I hit it with a Liquidation that does a bit less than half, so I make sure to go for an Icicle Spear afterwards, which actually gets 4 hits and the KO. Obstagoon is next, and expecting it to go for Obstruct since we used a physical move, I swap out into Weavile, who can set up freely against this thing since it only has Dark-type moves to hit me with. As you can see, it's barely doing any damage to me, so I can freely get to +6 with Swords Dance. After that, a quad-effective Brick Break deals with the Obstagoon, the same fate goes for Malamar and Skuntank, and we can survive the aftermath for the 7th gym badge. Hey, Marnie, I was just, wondering if, maybe you'd want to go on a date with me?
I love you, but my answer's a big fat no.
After defeating Piers, I make James Turner proud by evolving Vanillite into Vanillish and then into Vanillux. And so the time has come to face the final gym leader Raihan in a double battle. I go ahead and lead with Yeti and Nessie, and since Yeti has the Choice Scarf and the Guerrilla Tactics ability, I'm at +1 speed and attack, so I take out the Flygon right away. I then go for a Surf, but in the Sandstorm, it only does about 40% to the Gigalith. Sandaconda comes in, and I once again use my speed to my advantage and take it out right away with Yeti. Ice Beam does pitiful damage to Gigalith, but I end up actually getting the Freeze, which is funny since my game froze when I tried to get Lapras. I then switch out into Bigfoot to set up the Hail, since there's no way for Raihan to set up the Sandstorm again as he Gigantamaxes his Duraludon. And it's right about at this point when I realize that there's no way we're getting out of this fight without losing a Pokemon, and this Max Knuckle actually doesn't do enough to take out Bigfoot, but I did click Surf, which ironically means that Lapras is the first to get a KO. We do, however, take out the Gigalith, and I send in Frostlass just to go for a Will-O-Wisp since I know we outspeed, but unfortunately that is just not going to be enough to save Frostlass from that max Steel Spike, which is pretty unfortunate. I end up going for Charm with Lapras, which means that the Duraludon is at -1 because of Max Knuckle raising it to +1. The next turn, I have Nessie go for Protect since I plan on going for Earthquake, but Max Steel Spike hits Mamoswine to raise the defense of the Duraludon. So because of those defense boosts, Earthquake barely does any damage, but at least that's the final Dynamax turn for Duraludon. Assuming it's going to try to go for a KO on Mamoswine, I go for Protect as Duraludon tries for the Body Press, and an Ice Beam is enough to take it out, which means we got through Raihan with only 2 deaths, which I would say is a total win. Now that we have to progress through Route 10, we can actually get another encounter, and I opt to go for Mr. Mime. And Mr. Mime is actually going to be very useful on the team, but who decided that Mr. Mime was okay? Like, honestly, who greenlit Mr. Mime in Gen 1? This thing is no proper substitute for a real father, Delia Ketchum. And with that said, we've finally reached the capital city of Winden.
Cantonians and Galarians both seem to like waiting in lines.
This is a pretty fun reference to the fact that both the Japanese and the English love standing in line, but there's really no people who love standing in line more than the Swedes. But the great city of Winden is of course host to the Champions Cup, where our first opponent is Marnie, who we're gonna have to take down since she turned me down. However, since Liepard is free setup fodder for any dark type like our Weavile, she goes down pretty easily. This means that our second opponent is Hop, and I haven't included a single fight against Hop except the very first one because I pretty much did the exact same thing in every fight and just destroyed him with Cloyster. Pretty humiliating, but since the guy couldn't even defeat Bede, I don't feel too bad skipping to the next real opponent, Oleana. Now, Oleana, terrible person as she is, leads with Frostlass just to remind us of what we lost, but I of course go for my Scarfed Yeti, which means we can outspeed and destroy both Frostlass and Salazzle before Melodic comes in. I decide to stay in and go for a Rock Slide since I can probably take 1 hit, and we actually end up getting the Flinch, so 2 Rock Slides is enough to deal with the Melodic, which I thought would be a huge problem for the team. Against Arena, I decided to swap out into Cloyster, who has massive defense since I'm not expecting it to go for Trop Kick, and I eat an Acrobatics before swapping back into Yeti, who I only had to swap out because it's Choice Scarfed and Choice Banded by its ability. This means that G-Max Garbodor is the only Pokemon left on Oleana's team, so I decided to swap out into my bulkiest Pokemon, Lapra. This means I have to try and tank the incoming Max Rockfall, which I end up doing just barely as it sets up the Sandstorm, so I go for a Protect the next turn, and the following Max Rockfall does about half of my remaining health through the Protect as I swap out into Cloyster for the final G-Max turn. Now Cloyster is of course the Pokemon with the highest defense on my team, so I can tank the Max Rockfall, which is the final G-Max turn for Garbodor. I then decide my best course of action is to swap out into Mamoswine as the Garbodor just misses a Gunk Shot, so the next turn I'm free to take it out with an Earthquake. So after taking out Oleana's trash, we have to face our next opponent who's seemingly crawled out of the dumpster. He's also discarded his Psychic types in favor of Fairy types, so I decide to lead with Nessie as the Mawile goes for Intimidate, which doesn't really matter since I'm only going to use Nessie to lower the attack of this thing to -6. So once I've used my 3 charms, this Mawile basically can't do anything. Even though it's super effective with both Iron Head and Play Rough against Weavile, I switched it in freely so that I can set up a few Swords Dances. And once I've set up to +6, I've made sure to have both Brick Break to take care of the Mawile and Poison Jab to take care of every single other Fairy-type Pokemon on Bede's team. I'm just doing my part in encouraging this guy to dive back into the dumpster where he belongs. And so the real challenge continues, as our next opponent is Nessa, who leads with Golisopod, and I go for Yeti, who gets hit hard by a first impression and then can send it away with Emergency Exit using Rock Slide. After Golisopod is Seeking, and this thing loves to use Aquaring the first turn, so I take that time to swap out into Mamoswine, and the Seeking does exactly that. Mamo does end up being faster than the Seeking, so I hit it with an Earthquake, which doesn't quite take it out. Waterfall does about half my health, but another Earthquake is enough to neutralize the Seeking. And this is where my real plan against Nessa can come into play, as she sends in Barraskewda and I swap into Nessie to use Charm once again. I managed to dodge the Liquidation with Water Absorb, and a Drill Run doesn't do that much damage as I can start setting up charms to make this thing do no damage at all. I then decide to swap in Weavile, who's now safe to set up as many Swords Dances as it pleases, and I go ahead and get all the way to +6, taking out the Barraskewda with a Brick Break. I'm then expecting Golisopod to go for First Impression, so I made sure to teach Weavile Protect just to be able to dodge it since it can only use it once, and be able to take out its remaining health with Icicle Spear. The same goes for Pelipper, who gets absolutely demolished in 2 hits, and I can finally take down the G-Max Dreadnought with one single Brick Break. Now that Nessa's completely out of our way, I needed a way to be able to beat B since we don't have Frostlass anymore to dodge those fighting attacks, and that's when I remembered we have Mr. Mime. I level it up to Mr. Rhyme, which is just a more British and ridiculous version of Mr. Mime, and it's time to take on B once again. My strategy here is to give Mr. Mime the Choice Scarf, and even still, we're not going to be able to outspeed this Hawlucha, who's going to take a huge chunk of our health, leaving us at 18 HP before we can take it out with Psychic. Everything else on B's team, though, gets properly outsped by our Choice Scarf, and we can take everything out in one hit, except for Hermachamp. I even end up getting a critical hit with my Psychic here, but it leaves it at about 20% health, and Machamp can finish me off with a Max Flare. Honestly, it feels like a pretty fair trade-off to only have one of my Pokemon die against a typing that I'm super weak to. Yeti can just come in and clean up with an Ice Punch here, so it's really no problem. And with Beatrice out of the way, there's only one more gym leader we have to face before it's time to take on Leon, and that's Raihan the Dragon-type man. He leads off with his Torkoal, so I see the perfect opportunity to knock this thing out right away with Choice-Banded Mamoswine, and the exact same goes for Turtonator. It goes for Shell Trap, but never actually gets to use it since I knock it out. The next Pokemon is Goodra, but expecting it to go for Rain Dance, I go for Earthquake, and it almost actually takes it out in one hit, which I didn't expect, but another Earthquake's enough to just knock it out, and that marks the exact point where Choice Band Earthquake isn't going to be effective anymore since he sends in his Fliggin. Expecting a Sandstorm, I swap out here since Raihan loves to use his weather moves, and after eating an Earthquake, Lapra can take out the Fliggin with an Ice Beam. All we have left to take out now is a Duraludon, but unfortunately, Duraludon is part Steel type, which isn't looking great for our team of Ice types. I decided to do something similar to the last time I faced Raihan and just tank the Max Knuckle as it gets the boost and try to mitigate that boost by going for Charm to have it be net minus. The second turn of Dynamax, I swap into Cloyster, who has that massive defense, to tank the Max Rockfall, which it actually does very, very well. The final Dynamax turn, I figure I can take anything since this thing is at -1, and it goes for a Max Knuckle to get back to neutral, as I stupidly decide to go for an Icicle Spear, which only gets 2 hits, one of which is the crit, and still does no damage whatsoever. Finally though, the Dynamax turns are over, so I decide to swap out into Vanillux just to set up the Hail as I get hit by a Stone Edge, which does massive damage. I then swap into Mamoswine, not realizing that I'm actually slower, but the Duraludon ends up missing an Iron Head, but the next turn, it even gets the flinch, which means that I just sort of wasted switching in Mamoswine. Solely because of that flinch, I have to swap in Sunday once again to take an Iron Head just to be able to safely swap in Yeti, and Yeti can easily just take care of the rest of the Duraludon with a Brick Break. Unfortunate that we had to lose Sunday, but so it goes with RNG sometimes in Nuzlocks. After taking on Raihan, I didn't have a single Pokemon in the box, so I decided to catch both Glaceon and a Cubchoo in case I would need them.
Cute.
Now before we get to take on Leon, we have to face off against Rose, who has all Steel types, which should theoretically be really difficult for our team of Ice types. However, since Yeti can outspeed all his Pokemon at base, we can just give him double Choice Band and destroy the entire team. Rose never even stood a chance, and so the time has come for us to face off against the final challenge versus Champion Leon. Leon, of course, starts out with Aegislash, so I send out my choice-banded Mamoswine to take care of it with a single Earthquake. Next up is Haxorus, and my plan here is pretty simple. All I'm going to do is swap in Weavile, and you might think this is an odd choice because it's obviously just going to get destroyed by an Iron Tail, but that is Weavile's purpose in this battle. I'm not really going to need Weavile for the rest of this fight, so it's a necessary sacrifice to send in my Focus-Sashed Cloyster, who actually survives that outrage really well as I can set up a Shell Smash. So it all comes down to this. Is one Shell Smash on Cloyster gonna be enough to take out Leon? Well, it's definitely enough to take out both Haxorus and Rhyperior. Even Dragapult and Rillaboom stand no chance against the super effective Icicle Spear. But it was never any of them that I worried about. I was always holding out for his final Pokemon, G-Max Charizard. Is one single liquidation from a +2 Cloyster gonna be able to take out this boss of a Pokemon? Of course not. In shame, Cloyster is gonna have to retire from the team under the weight of 1,000 tons of rock. But wait, is this it? Is this Delibird's time to shine? The 1 in a million opportunity? No, Leon's gonna go for a full restore. Of course he's gonna heal. Why would they always... Yeah, why would I think that? Delibird, maybe another time. And with Delibird's noble sacrifice and untimely demise, there's only one that can make this right, and it's the Abominable Snowman. Now that Charizard has no more Dynamax turns left and didn't use Max Airstream once, we can outspeed with our Scarfed Yeti and take it down for the victory. And that's how I did it. That's how I beat a Pokemon Sword Hardcore Nuzlocke using only Ice types. Not only that, it's also how I completed a Monotype Nuzlocke of every single type in all of Pokemon. And let me thank both Keegan J and Flygon HG for making appearances in this video. If you guys haven't checked out their channel, what are you doing? And if you're not subscribed to this channel, then what are you doing? See you next time!